Welcome to the Pulpit and Porch, previously known as the Small Church Podcast. I'm Tony Marr, and with me is my friend Robert Kell.
Hey everyone, we're glad you're here. The Pulpit and Porch is where we kick back, put up our feet, and talk about real life stuff of ministry, faith, community, and maybe a little sports and pop culture.
Yeah, if you're expecting a perfectly polished sermon, you're probably in the wrong place.
We're more about those honest heart-to-heart conversations, like the ones you'd have on the front porch with friends. Sometimes we stay on track, and sometimes we take the scenic route.
That's half the fun, isn't it? Here we tackle the highs, the lows, and the in-betweens of church and of life. Every now and then, we'll welcome a few friends to the front porch and share stories and ideas that might just change the way that you see things.
So whether you're a pastor, church leader, or just someone who loves the church, pull up a chair, grab some sweet tea, and let's dive in. Welcome to the Pulpit and Porch. We've got a seat waiting for you.
Welcome back into the Pulpit and Porch. I am Tony Marr here with my friend and co-host Robert Kell, and we are continuing on with our discussion on the Super Bowl, all things Super Bowl games, Super Bowl commercials, Super Bowl halftime shows, Super Bowl cultural impact, Super Bowl commerce, all things SBLXIII. Did I get that right?
I thought it was just LIX.
LIX.
Hopped on a plane at LA, off a plane at LIX. I don't know. Yeah, something like that.
Are you going Hannah Montana there? Is that what that was?
Was that post Hannah that she did that song?
I couldn't remember her name, so I had to say Hannah Montana. Miley Cyrus.
Yeah. So we were sitting around the other night, and Colby's baseball team, the coaches were doing a they called it like Murfreesboro week, because that's where the state championship's held, and this team, the team he's playing for this year, it's not the same team. He didn't play for this team last year, but the team he's playing for this year in high school went to the state finals last year. And so he's there and he's hanging out, and they're doing Murfreesboro week. And my assumption is that they're just not calling it what military calls the really hard week, because they're trying to not have their kids coming home and telling the parents that they're in the middle of that. But they had to do karaoke as one of their competitions. And so they were doing 2-a-day practices. They're doing 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. And so he was working out every morning at 6 a.m. at the school. And he's really fortunate. This school is on the campus of a D1 university. So he's at a D1 workout facility, so he's having a great time. But it's they had to sing, and the seniors, he's a junior, the seniors got to pick the song, and they chose Alan Jackson's Chattahoochee, which he had never heard in his life, which makes me on some levels feel like a bad dad, but because I felt like I heard that song the moment it came out, like the first time it ever played. But in that, we started watching these YouTube videos of just 90s country stuff, and Achy Breaky Heart which is Miley's dad. And they were just like, and the boys were like, that's a mullet right there. And we were like, that's Miley Cyrus's dad. And they're like, that's Miley. And so the boys were just kind of blown away, like all the stuff. And
then you felt old.
Oh my goodness. I feel older all the time. It is absolutely like bonkers. I was listening to a podcast about the Blues Brothers movie, and they're like, we are further from the second Blues Brothers movie in time frame than the second Blues Brothers movie was from the first one. And it was almost 20 years apart from each other. And I'm like, this is like, I'm just going, man, life is moving so quick. And Melissa and I, the boys, did I say this the other day? The boys watch Stranger Things, and we like Young Sheldon. And I miss that era. I love that stuff, but it's just like, man, that was a lifetime ago that things were that way. So yeah, but yeah, Miley Cyrus, I don't know how, the LIX, because you talked about in the last episode, why are we still doing the Roman numeral thing? Yeah. And LIX, I thought that was weird.
So in 48 hours, I'll be jumping on a plane to LAX.
LIX, yeah.
All right, so Super Bowl commercials. I remember back in the day when
Oh my goodness.
You had to wear Depends when you were watching the Super Bowl because you couldn't get up to
Could
leave.
not get up to go
during commercial breaks because you were going to
Such
miss
a big
something
deal.
that was going to be talked about in the cafeteria the next day.
And like the first commercial was always this like mega thing. And so the first commercial was usually something very new. I didn't even look. Did you look and see how much the ads cost this year?
$8 million for a 30-second spot.
Okay. So you're so right. So continue.
What's your all-time favorite Super Bowl commercial?
I should have spent more. I started trying to go down this road, and I don't know that I have. Man, there's been some good ones.
What's up?
That's one that's coming to my brain, and I'm like, they just leveraged that in like, what was that late 90s, early 2000s?
Oh yeah.
That one there was so big. There,
I loved the one of the baby in the swing.
Yes.
And the baby was smiling and then would cry and smiling and cry. And then the camera pans out. And every time it goes up, it saw through the window the golden arches of McDonald's.
Did you remember the one where the kid thought he was dressed as Darth Vader and he thought he was opening the door on the van and the dad was running the clicker?
Yeah.
And the kid was like, whoa. And I was like, there's just so many unbelievable commercials. They've done. Did the MJ Larry commercial drop in a Super Bowl? Yep. They're playing horse.
Yeah.
Like that's I mean, just being a huge Larry Bird fan, and that was an incredible one. So yeah, it was a different animal.
I think that they've really shifted over the years to back in all the ones that we're talking about now. Their focus was on pure humor and creativity. And now it's shifted to integrating social and political images and messages, interactive campaigns. It's the heart and the intent of the commercials, I think, has really shifted a whole lot.
I agree. And so the other thing too is the commercials only came out on Super Bowl Sunday, and then you started seeing them.
Yeah.
There were a lot of the commercials that they were playing them.
That was surprising.
And I'm like, and I feel like last year was the same way. I'm like, I saw this 2 weeks ago. And so I wasn't a big fan.
Were there any commercials from this year's Super Bowl that really stood out to you?
So I thought it was weird that two companies, I don't know if it was an in-house or if they had an outside creative agency or whatever, did commercials wrapped around facial hair flying off their face.
Yeah. Very weird.
And
the Pringles one was very strange.
And I thought both of those were just kind of weird. Watching a commercial, when Sally met Hellman's, when Harry met Sally and stuff, that was just odd watching that with your family. I thought it was there. I really enjoyed the couple I enjoyed, and this may, as my son the other day when we were talking about the halftime show, and he said, "Okay, boomer." And I'm like, I don't think you understand how old I am. But this may actually make me more of that. I love the Ultra Hustle where
the paddle ball,
playing pickleball.
I
thought that was incredibly fun. But again, I saw that a month ago. It feels like it definitely was at least a couple of weeks ago. I enjoyed the Harrison Ford Jeep thing.
I don't think I saw that one.
It was long.
I caught that.
It was called Owner's Manual, and it was really, really long. And then I thought the one with Post Malone, and I'm forgetting who was with him. He's a comedian. The big men on the cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny. The Bud Light commercial.
That's funny because I didn't know that the other guy in a lawn chair was a celebrity.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I just thought he was an actor. I didn't know until you just said that. I didn't know that he was a celebrity.
Yeah. I mean, so is there? I don't know. those were kind of the ones. What about you? What kind of stood out to you?
See, I think that we've seen a trend over the last few years, and maybe it's been longer than that in order for your Super Bowl to be considered successful, you have to have a celebrity in it.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't used to be that way. And yet some of my favorites from this past Super Bowl didn't have a celebrity in them. I loved the one of the little kid boxing and fighting cancer, and he's running out to everyone cheering. I loved the baby Clydesdale on his first delivery one. I thought that one was pretty clever. But then I really liked the, what was it, Stella Artois one with Beckham and his long lost twin brother. It ends up being Matt Damon. I thought that one was funny. I liked that one.
Speaking of Matt, like he, one of his kind of buddies and Ben Affleck
the Dunkings.
The Duncan Dunkings.
I appreciate I thought the one last year was great.
So much funnier.
Was great.
So much funnier.
But
last year.
do appreciate him being able to make fun of himself.
Yeah.
So many celebrities be like, there's no way I'm doing that. The fact that he's just like, oh no, I'm going for it. And I thought that was great.
Yeah, he was great. I guess some of this stuff too, I just look at like, and actually, we can talk about it. He Gets Us did another ad. And and we'll talk about that in a few minutes with culture and things, but yeah, I mean, some of that
I didn't love their ad this year.
It wasn't as great, and honestly, I was sitting here going like, I know they did an ad, and I'm trying to remember all the intricacies of it, and I don't know that I can. And so,
but then there were several that I sat there with my wife and kids, and after they were done, I thought someone really pitched that idea in a boardroom a year ago, 8 months ago, pitched that idea in a boardroom and said, let's put $8 million to do this. And everyone in that boardroom signed off on that.
And that Harrison Ford ad was a minute. It was $16 million. It might have been long. It was long. It was a really long ad. And I mean, it's like some of these things are, you're not just looking at A, B, or C. I mean, you're looking at this thing and going, like you said, and used to, I think, like the homes.com, they did two separate ads. I mean, they brought in Morgan Freeman. I mean, it was an incredible amount of money. I did think the Disney What If thing was a little funny. The Disney Plus What If there weren't murderers in the building? What if?
Oh yeah, I did see that.
I thought, you know what? That's kind of clever, but I mean, it's just, this whole weird walk back thing. It was a little funny, but I don't know that it was worth, $8 million.
So what do you think that the commercials say about the values and priorities of our culture? We've spent a lot of time today talking about values in culture with the words that we use. What do you think these commercials say about that?
I think some of it is there is a level of nostalgia that is there. Like you talk about Catherine O'Hara and, oh my goodness, Willem Dafoe. You think about Harrison Ford. I mean, these are incredibly talented actors that have held the screen for decades. I mean, longer than you and I've been alive. And they all three of them have movies that many people have on some type of yearly cycle. I mean, I watch Home Alone, at least the first one, every Christmas. There's just my boys, we love Spider-Man. I loved Tobey Maguire in the first Spider-Man. I thought Willem Dafoe was great. Harrison Ford, I mean, it's not just the movies he was in, but the soundtracks that John Williams did with them. Like, you hear these songs and you can see him running through and doing. And so I think there's this sense of nostalgia. I also think that in a little bit, if you kind of start to look through, there's this sense of community and legacy. You start to think about, just the different things of the cul-de-sac guys and playing pickleball together and all this. There's a sense of nostalgia. There's a sense of community that's in those things. And then the things I'll just being transparent. The things I sometimes have a hard time getting, is I think the ones that are maybe geared to, I don't know who are what generation is the 18 to 25-year-olds right now. But that age group, I sometimes have a hard time kind of grabbing a hold of a couple of those things. And then the last thing I'll say, and I think the halftime show exhibited this as well. I think that people are more interested in making a point. Not a bad thing. We said that in the first half of this. Not a bad thing. I think people are more interested in making a point than they are entertaining at times right now. And those would be my 4 thoughts. I'd love to hear you agree, disagree, challenge any of those thinkings.
I don't challenge anything that you just said. I think that the commercials reflect cultural trends, which is pretty much what you were saying. And I think that you see a huge push for diversity right now in cultural trends. I think that you see a huge push for sustainability. And I mean, really, you said community, and I think that's huge. But I also think there's a huge push for escapism.
Yeah, no, go. I've got a thought in a second. I want to hear your thoughts, though.
That's what I was going to say. I think that what I said just a minute ago is that they've really our ads have gone from being focused on how do we just get people's attention with humor and creativity to how do we give a message? How does this commercial get across a point? A lot of times a political message. A lot of times maybe it's through nostalgia that we want to trigger some sort of emotion in them that will tie them to our brand. I also think the influx and the change in digital and social media has changed the way that companies interact with their consumers. And so their ads reflect that a lot. They engage with their customers in a different way. And so you've got a lot of multi-platform experiences that you see in your commercials, that they're pushing you to take it a step further. Visit our website. The number of times that there were QR codes that you could scan from your TV in a commercial because they want to continue on a multi-platform experience. They've used this 30 seconds to try to not just draw you to buy their product, but to continue the engagement with them through a different platform.
So how quickly did you buy back in with the second run of the QR code? Do you remember when it came through the first time?
Oh, yeah.
And
we
it's
put
like,
it on T-shirts.
You had to download an app, and it was super weird and clunky. And like I was very untrusting of the QR code when they brought it back to things. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Something that was interesting as well, and as you were talking, I was listening to a podcast recently, and they were talking through just how people are more and more isolated. And something that I would, in some ways, and something that's interesting is like when you look at the beer commercials and some of these other types of commercials, they like are promoting community, because if you sit at home and drink 12 beers, it's sad. You drink 12 beers with some friends and it's a good time. And so like there is this whole thing of, hey, listen, there are products that are trying to drive community. But yet at the same time, if you think about Uber Eats and Instacart, now they hit Uber Eats especially hit the nostalgia, and
are they the one that showed all the old Super Bowl commercials
with Matthew McConaughey?
But they had like the puppy monkey baby running down the street, and they had, wasn't that Uber Eats that had all of the iconic characters from past Super Bowl commercials?
Yes, Century of Cravings. Yeah, they had a whole bunch of stuff. They had the Bears coach, Ditka.
I love the Matthew McConaughey one. That was a different commercial, though. That was a different commercial.
I'm trying to look through them right here too. It's very hard to kind of see them all. I don't remember, but like in that space of even just the one with McConaughey and things and all the funny stuff and catching the nostalgia side, when you think about the fact that like restaurants are like coming in, sit down and eating is struggling. Like the biggest restaurants, nice restaurants, are creating side doors for you to run in and run out of their restaurant to get their to get to go orders. And so it's something that's really kind of unique that people just are are hibernating. And I think that people who are making money off of you hibernating are trying to find ways to make you feel better about it. I think there's some organizations that are going, I don't know, maybe beer sales are down because people are hibernating more. And like I said, somebody goes, me sitting at home drinking 6 beers tonight is sad. I mean, so I'm not going to drink as much, because I'm here by myself. But and again, there's just there's some speculation inside of this, but just watching culture and things, you're seeing this battle and this tension of what does it mean to re-engage the community and what does it mean to hide from community?
Well, we talked about some of this last week, and I don't remember if it was on air or off air. We had a long conversation when we hit stop on record about the fact that attention spans are shortening. There's all sorts of data that shows the shortening of attention spans. And I think that brands are adapting to those shorter attention spans. There's increased social consciousness from starting in, and I would even say younger than middle school. And I think that brands are really trying to do that. And so you've got a lot of ads that are now focusing on storytelling rather than just direct product placement.
Yeah.
That there was only one ad that had the name of their product in the name of the ad. And I don't remember which one that was. There was only one commercial in all of the Super Bowl that the name of the product was in the name of the ad.
Yeah, I don't know, because I'm just scrolling through and looking at some things here, and I'm seeing a couple, but I might, but I don't doubt like somebody saying that at all. Like it's something that's just, it's incredibly weird where we are with a lot of things. But also too, you look at it, like you think about Uber Eats, you think about Instacart, you think about NFL flag football. You start thinking about a lot of the commercials and stuff that's there. There's no brand. There's not I mean, I know Instacart has a brand. I'm not that stupid, but like, there's not, as like the brand is different. And like you jump on Instacart, it's not like you're throwing an Instacart sticker. I mean, you and I could go hop in our car and drive down the road right now, and we could probably, if we spent, for the next hour driving around, we could probably find 10, 15 cars that have a Bud Light or a Miller Lite sticker on their car somewhere. We could find people that have different products and things that are there. Unless you are a driver for Uber or you're a driver for Lyft or something like that, you're not putting that on your car. And so I think it's just a different animal. I mean, there's not a lot of people going to put NFL flag 50 on their car. And again, that's nothing against that promotion or that ad. I mean, it's just a different animal of what it is. And so I don't think that the brand drives as much as it used to.
I will say there were some of these commercials, like I said, someone actually pitched that seal's face on a seal. Somebody signed off on that. It said, "Oh, this is a great idea."
And then he was on the boat going, I don't know, but that seal was pretty handsome. I mean, it was
Ritz Salty Club is the only one that had their name in the name of the ad.
I mean, the Doritos commercial, the guy held a Doritos bag.
No. I'm saying in the actual name that they had to name their commercials. They each have a title. They each have a name that was provided by the brand, and everyone else, like the Haagen-Dazs, is Not So Fast, Not So Furious.
Oh, yeah.
The only one that actually had the name of the brand in their name of their commercial of their spot was Ritz Salty Club.
The pickleball Michelob Ultra one had a double entendre called the Ultra Hustle.
Yeah.
But I know you're absolutely right on that. I see what you're saying now. I thought you were talking about throughout the progression of the ad, there wasn't really much there, but most of these probably didn't.
So we've talked about this change of culture, change of ideals, and the change of strategy in doing commercials, how that shifted over the last decade, maybe even shorter than that. How might the change influence our ministry strategies?
You and I were talking the other day, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, like, because I mean, I know you probably have a lot you could say about this. You probably could launch into this as quickly as I was launching into the words we say. You were talking about the shift from Leno to Fallon on the Tonight Show, and how your staff, your creative team at the church you were at that moment in time, you all started circling up and going, there's a change coming. I mean, it's here. And how do we respond from our job, which is ministry at that, that season? How do we respond because people are going to start to shift how they consume content?
Information. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, good gracious, was that 15 years ago?
10 years ago.
Okay. 10 years ago when that shift happened, and I think that in that space, we're in that same place now. We've kind of got to start to go, okay, what's happening? And it's really interesting. There's a church in Nashville. I think, again, we talk so much on and off the air, and I'm, in just true transparency, typically if we do a 2-part thing, we record that all in one sitting and we split it. This didn't happen that way. So there's a little bit of both of us going, we probably talked an hour or an hour and a half before each episode, and now we're talking in the episodes. Church in Nashville, that they don't live stream their service anymore. The average age of the church is 25, and they do not live stream their service because they want to create FOMO. And I mean, it's insane to kind of think about that. But those are conversations we're going. Like, now I don't know that we're not in Nashville with any of the churches that are in our network and things that, when I'm sitting with the other leaders and we're talking about this, we're not in Nashville. We're not in that big of a city, but we're starting to go, is there value in going, hey, the sermon will be dropped at 9:00 or 6:00 on Monday morning, or 6 p.m. on Sunday night, or something like that. Is there value in that? Is there something that we kind of get that goes and people like, okay, this is worth this, kind of creates a different level of tension and like, oh man, I want to see this. But when you start looking at these ads, what is the church's responsibility? If you start looking at what culture and in the world, not of it, what's our responsibility to look at the things that are being addressed? And I mean, and I think we just have to scroll through. I mean, you start to think about, the NFL Play 50 was very much about women's flag football. What's the tensions around, gender and what's happening in these different worlds, and what should be the church's response and address, and how do you kind of step into those things when there's a need for things to be championed? Or on the flip side, and maybe that was a terrible one to say, and I probably shouldn't have picked one ad because somebody's going to think that I'm really strong opinion one way or the other on this, and I actually do, but are there things that we need to speak into that go against culture, that go against scripture? And how does that work on social media? Because my heart is more, I'll talk about anything in the world, but I'd rather do it across the table and over a cup of coffee. Come to my house, let's have dinner, and I'll talk about anything you want to talk about. I'm not a huge fan of saying things that I really don't care about getting canceled. I mean, I don't know that I'm important enough to be canceled, but I don't say things that I think can just last timelessly. I think that's the tension for me. And what the church has to ask is, when you look at the 50-ish ads that came out at the Super Bowl, like you said, what are they selling? Not just physically selling, but what are they culturally selling? And how are they doing that? What should the church start to adapt that style of marketing? And should the church have a voice in, should the church be creating a voice or adding to the conversation, or maybe trying to take away from the conversation of some of the things that are being said there? That's a ramble. I struggle with this because I don't really take a lot of time anymore trying to copy the world's ads, because we used to do that. We'd take commercials that we're seeing, we'd go in and recreate that whole thing to make something funny and show it at church. And I don't do that I don't do that anymore.
But that's the change that I think we're seeing, is what we just talked about before, is that marketing experts are adapting their messages to meet cultural shifts that we've spent the last 45 minutes talking about. So I think the church also needs to consider how it presents the gospel. That the church needs to embrace storytelling more than it has in the past, digital engagement more than it has in the past, meeting people where they are more than it has in the past, without diluting the truth, obviously. I think that those are key takeaways that we have from looking at what's happening in secular culture that the church maybe needs to get on board with. I think even looking at specifically the commercials, what we talked about just a little while ago, that you go back 15, 20 years ago, the commercials were designed just to make you laugh. And by making you laugh, they hoped that there was a connection between the humor and their product. The church used to look a lot like that too. You look at the way that a lot of pastors wrote their sermons 10, 15, 20 years ago. If you had a great joke at the beginning and a great joke at the end, something that could really make people laugh, then that was a home run. That doesn't work anymore. It's not the way that people connect anymore. There's much more social engagement that a younger generation is looking for, at least intellectually. A lot of times, and I think we've talked about this on the show before, you don't see it a lot in the way that they actually live out their lives. But intellectually, they are all for social experience, social improvement, and cultural shifts. Now, whether or not they're actually living that out with their lives is a different thing. But the church has to be aware that if we want to reach a younger generation, they want more than just humor. They want more than just to be entertained. They want to change the world. They want to be a part of something that matters. And so the way that we present the gospel needs to be in a way that's not just simply trying to entertain, not just making the gospel something attractional, but we're making the gospel something that is life-changing and culture-changing, which it is. Throughout human history, the power of Jesus has changed cultures. It has shaped cultures. And the church, for a long period of time through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, was so focused on just being attractional and making our message entertaining enough to get you through the doors and have you come back, that we weren't as concerned with going out and using the message to change the world that we live in. And I think that's changed a lot in the last 10 years, that the people who come in don't simply just want to be entertained. They want to see life change in themselves and in the world that they live in every day. And the church, the ones that are doing that well, that have adapted to that well, are the ones that are seeing incredible movements take place.
So you said the word entertain, and are you not entertained went into my brain. And so in a world where we all want to write Gladiator, but sometimes we write Gladiator 2. Not terror. I mean, if I was going to watch a double feature with Gladiator, I would not choose Gladiator 2. I would find a different movie. I don't feel like I wasted 2 hours of my life. I've watched it twice now. Landon and I saw it with you in the theater, and then I watched it with the rest of my family the other day, and it was worse the second time around. Like it was, it really, I mean, you've ever
watched it again?
Yeah. I mean, it's on Paramount. And so, Brody hadn't seen it. Melissa was like, oh man, I enjoyed Gladiator 1. And Gladiator is one of my top 5 movies. And again, those are things that are personal. I'm not saying Gladiator is a top 5 movie of all time. I'm saying for me personally,
that's scientifically proven.
I'm trying to think.
Gladiator is a top 5 movie of all time. Not debatable.
I'll have to look that up.
If Gladiator's not on your top 5 list of movies of all time, then you need to take a personal retreat and do some major introspective thinking.
we cannot go down this rabbit hole right now.
We're already over an hour on this episode. And we've still got a whole nother segment to cover on this.
Like, we cannot go down this rabbit hole, but I'm just telling you, like, I love Gladiator. It is one of my top 5 movies of all time, but it is
That's because
not,
you have a heartbeat.
It is not a top 5 movie when you start to list top 10, top 5, top 100
IMDb
movies.
Doesn't count. The RIAA or whatever it is.
It's actually ranked in the 30s.
Come on.
When you think all time, I mean, come on. We both just said come on twice.
I have seen
Godfather.
I have seen on more than one occasion. I have seen Rosebud, whatever it is, the Rosebud, the movie that's always number one.
Oh, Shawshank Redemption is always number one.
No. The old one that his little sled is named Rosebud. Citizen Kane.
Oh, yeah.
Citizen Kane. I've seen Citizen Kane a couple of times. It is not a better movie than Gladiator. It is not a better movie than Saving Private Ryan.
I like when this culturally, I'm telling you, like, it's like 12.
It is not a better movie
like 12
than Monty
Angry
Python and the Holy Grail.
Oh, I cannot even get through that movie. I don't know that I've literally seen that start to finish. I just cannot stand it at all. Not my humor.
When I get back from Vegas,
oh my goodness,
you guys are coming over. We're going to pop some popcorn. We're going to sit down.
If your wife was not a good cook,
Monty
I would
Python
decline. If your wife was not such a good cook, I would decline that invite. I mean, it is like I probably will need a nap by the time you get back. So I'll probably
favorite bad movie. What's your favorite bad movie?
Goodness. I don't know what's considered bad.
You're not going to find it on any list of the top 100 movies of all time.
You know, there was one with Ashton Kutcher and Sean William Scott. Dude, where's my car?
Oh my gosh.
That was so terrible. But I can, like, there's a moment where you come in and like when they're at the oh crud. It's a word I probably wouldn't say anymore.
You just said
I did. And so again, it's a growing process. I'm trying to think where they are, the laundromat and the car, like that. Like if I can drop in about there, I can hang with it and go and kind of run in. But yeah, I think that there's things like that I've walked out of one movie, The Jerk. Not The Jerk.
Old one, right?
No, not that one.
80s,
sorry. There was another one that
maybe?
was another Jerk movie. And it was terrible. We paid $1 and we walked out of it. Like it's
easier to walk out when you've only paid $1. When you've paid $23,
I would have probably still walked out, but it was like 97, so $1 wasn't far off from what the normal movie price was back then. But anyway, so when people have written, you know, you same people who've kind of put Gladiator and Gladiator 2 together, and you start to look at like
Point Break,
the content.
Point Break.
Oh. There you go.
Favorite bad movie.
That's not a bad movie. That's actually gets pretty high. I mean, you've got Keanu, you've got Patrick Swayze. I mean, like it was like that movie gets pretty. Movie. People give that really good reviews.
Such a great movie.
I'm starting to question your like movie.
You're not finding it on IMDb's list of the top 50 movies of all time. You're not seeing Point Break.
Not of all time, but no, it's
favorite characters in movie history. You're not seeing Johnny Utah on any of those. Although I did see a Johnny Utah bumper sticker in town the other day.
That's so funny. Only in Northeast Tennessee, but like when people write, you know, Gladiator, and then they turn around and write Gladiator 2. Content sometimes functions at you know, just the content drop off is so far, and we're starting. I mean, and in this, you're talking about like as the church, we need to be creating content that is on par and in conversation and creating the same tensions that culture, and I'm not saying,
and that should be a weekly thing.
Yes,
it really should. I think that we put such emphasis on a couple of big weekends a month that we should put the same kind of emphasis on every weekend, because there may be someone who's walking through the doors of your church for the first time ever, the first time in a really long time, and they should get your strive for excellence just as much that week as they did on Easter.
So literally, and it's so funny we're talking about this, and I don't think we both have a pretty good game plan of where we're going with this.
Not it.
This was not it, but literally the rest of my day, this is my day off, and the rest of my day, until I go to watch my kid in a recital tonight, is like I am like in social media world. That is all I'm doing, is creating content today and working content and studying content and that type of process. I need to create, and it's part of my job. And so I get to do both those things a little bit, but I'm struggling with when you talk about competing, like it sometimes feels, so I've got two questions. One, what would you say to someone who maybe is wanting to do this, but doesn't, like, they just can't get there? Like they're writing Gladiator 2 every week and it's just not engaging. I understand with time, I mean, comes getting better, like doing it daily, doing it weekly, paying attention. And how do you encourage someone who's competing against, you and I both used to always say, because back when we were youth pastors decades ago, well, maybe decades for me, you're not as old as I am.
Oh, it's been decades. Yeah.
Like, we can't compete with MTV, because back then MTV was still playing a little bit of music, but they were also doing Springer Break and things like that. And, MTV was putting out like 30-page documents called It's Your Sex Life, of how to kind of navigate your sex life. And this is, thankfully I printed that off. I still have that at my house that they put out in like 2004. And so they were putting out stuff like, we can't compete with this at the scale because financially we can't do it. So when you look at somebody who they're the only pastor, they're a bivocational person at their church is, 40 people. They don't have anybody that would be really considered overly creative. And they feel like that they're writing, Dude, Where's My Car? They're not even writing Gladiator 2. They're writing, which Gladiator 2 on its own would probably have been a fine movie compared to having something else that's set ahead of it. And so how do you kind of set that up and help pastors navigate this and journey this space where I think this is incredibly hard? And I have a degree in design. Like I live like my life looking at these types of things and thinking through story. And I even sometimes have a hard time going, how do I mimic that in a ethical, theologically correct way to point people towards following Jesus and not just make bad content?
What do you do better than anyone else? What do you do better than other
drive
50,
to your house once a week? And
what do you do better than the other 50 churches in a 5-mile radius of your church, and focus on that? Maybe that's my question to every pastor that I get a chance to sit down with. Don't try to be John Mark Comer, because you can't be John Mark Comer. Don't try to be.
Don't
Andy
tell me what
Stanley,
I can't be,
because you can't be Andy Stanley. What do you do better than everyone?
Are you
else
talking to me
you?
personally right here?
No, you asked a question. What would I
with
say
Andy
to,
and John Mark? It's like you're speaking right to me.
What do you do better, and focus on that? The other thing that I would say that we talked about a couple of weeks ago is there are so many tools available for you now that were not available even 3 years ago, that can help with some of the things like we're talking about, engaging in social areas and things outside of just your 20 to 40 minute time of teaching on Sunday mornings behind a pulpit or on a stage. that there are things that can help with that. But I think the big thing is there are many, many other avenues. We talked earlier that marketing departments are having to shift the way that they think, the way that they're communicating with their consumers, their potential customers, based on the ways that we're seeing cultural shifts take place. So it's not just simply a 30-second commercial that's hoping to make you laugh and do product placement in there somewhere that you correlate your humor with their product and makes you want to go buy their product. They need to connect on a deeper level. They want to connect on a more cultural, social level with you. And then they want to push you to somewhere else for a deeper engagement than what they can get out of their 30 seconds, $8 million. You need to think the same way, that it's not just simply what you can do in your 20 to 40 minutes on Sunday morning. It's how can you continue the conversation in other ways outside of that? And so what can you be doing that is going to connect with them in a deeper level than what can happen from you being on a stage and them being in a pew or in a chair for 30 minutes once a week on a Sunday morning, to how can you engage them on a deeper level, on a more social level, on a more emotional, personal, intimate level outside of that? And what are the gifts that God has given you, the way that he has uniquely designed you, different from anyone else that you know that's around you, that gives you a unique avenue to do that? Find those things out and then lean into those things. Stop trying to be what you're not and lean into what you are and leverage that.
You said a couple of things there, and I heard somebody say recently, what's your superpower? And if you said to me, what's something you do better than any other church within, 50 minutes or 50 miles or 5 minutes or whatever of you, I might struggle with that. And that's just me being like transparent. I think that I love how you think. And it's one of my favorite things about our friendship and partnership in ministry and things like that, is that you challenge me to kind of go, okay, I wouldn't ask that question that way. And on my own, without you, I might not be able to answer that question as well, because we've had that conversation before. And you helped me get that answer. And so, one, if somebody's out there and they're like, hey, I need help, like they need to email in and let, because you'll help them answer that question.
And you can hear me say all of that and sit there and say, that all sounds really cool. What does that mean for me?
Which is why
we can help you figure that out.
Yeah, which is why I go back to the thing that I heard. What's your superpower? Like, what's the thing that when you look at, you go, my heart is broken for this demographic, this hurt, this tension. Hey, our superpower is we create community well. Now, so our Sunday morning experience may not be may not be the best thing within 50-mile radius, but man, once you get here, it's home. And you sit in people's homes, you have dinner with people. We encourage and hold each other accountable. Hey, we are killing it in children's ministry right now. Like, that is our superpower. When parents bring their kids, like they email us, they text us, they call us, and they're like, my kid is growing like crazy. Like, those are things that, like, when you go, what's my superpower? It maybe turns a little more, it's still an introspective thing, but I think that it's something that you're introspective in a way of maybe you move out of comparison into reflection. And I think both are necessary, by the way. I just personally, and again, I've said this to you, a year ago, when we were having some of these conversations around the ministry that I'm leading right now and where I'm at, we were having some of these conversations. You had to help me get through that. The other thing, so I love what you said there, and that was just one of my thoughts. The other thing I would say is that you were talking about these ads are designed to, like, they want to convict you to care about what they care about. And we've talked about, like, streaming services that these guys are saying, hey, we know we influence culture and we're going to continue to create content until culture reflects what we think it should. Commercials are almost an easier way of doing that, because you and I right now, if we were this smart and we had these connections, we could take and start a branding machine that people could come to us, and we might actually be smart enough to do a decent job with this. Combined, we have pretty good. You're a great storyteller, and I've got some skills. So combined, we're pretty smart with this. But you think about 30-second ads, and you start a process of moving people from one emotion to then being so bought into that idea over a process of 6 months. Like, I watch a movie one time and I might go, I can tell what they're trying to say there. But if every time I'm watching a sporting event, every time I log in and I'm on Peacock or something, and maybe I've got something where I don't have ad free, Amazon is one thing right now. We didn't pay for the ad free with that. So ads pop up inside of our thing, and we see a commercial and your commercial starts to jump in. It's every 30 seconds and it's multiple times a day. And I'm walking around, I'm humming the tune that's underneath it. I'm thinking about how funny Matthew McConaughey or Wanda Sykes was, or whoever's in that space. And I start to go through these ideas, and eventually over a 6-month period, and I've seen your commercial 500 times, I start to go, do I really believe that? Or I'm either extremely convicted going, this is a problem, and I have to be a voice either for or against this thing. And so my question kind of comes to, how does the church create content that starts to become that jingle type? So, like, I'm listening to what you're saying and I'm going, okay, now I'm like, I'm always pretty inspired to create, but like, these are things I'm asking these questions from a little heavier perspective, maybe.
The great news for you and for anyone who is asking that same question is that the content has already been written for us.
The Bible?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know where you were going there. I really didn't.
The message has already been written. And so it's just figuring out a creative way to tell it.
But do you think there's a tension in that? Because, I mean, you and I have a lot of talks around, and it's not much personally. I mean, you and I have a couple of things we talk about theologically that we have some differing thoughts on, but like, there's some of these heavier topics that we're talking about that there's literally, a church that's here and a church across the street, and they have like picketing sign opposing views. Like, it's intense, kind of what's there. And both are very vocal and very loud. Even if they're trying to do it well, like, there's a tension there of how to, I guess people just have to kind of take the Bible and go. But I mean, on some levels, how do we navigate that as well in that space of inside of some churches and leadership and things where that tension and people kind of giving bad information? How do we kind of come around though and point and direct and lead in a way that helps challenge some of the thinking with still leaving an opportunity for conversation?
Jesus. I mean, it's simple as that just keep coming back to Jesus. And I think when churches get off track, it's because they've gotten away from Jesus. When churches split, when churches form new denominations, when churches form new sets of bylaws and theological statements and creeds, it's because we've gotten away from Jesus. And no book but the Bible, right? No creed but Christ. Just continually coming back to Jesus. And when we get away from Jesus, that's when our own personal opinions, our own personal thoughts, likes and dislikes come into place. And so continually pointing people back to Jesus.
And I think that's where the He Gets Us campaign does some things really, really well. Because
I would agree.
I've heard Ed Stetzer, who is a big part of the He Gets Us campaign and helps them with their creation and content and things. And Ed just talks about like we catch grief all the time because people are like, oh, you left this vague or you didn't step into this. And he's like, yeah, but were we wrong? And they're like, well, that's not the point. And he's like, no, that really is the point, because all we're trying to do is to get people to ask questions about Jesus. And if you've got some questions around Jesus, or maybe you're one of these people who don't love people very well, doesn't mean you have to agree with everything. And you can even share with kindness why you think the scriptures say things differently than how this goes. But he said our goal is to create conversation around Jesus. So no, I was hoping we could kind of get there. And you said some really good stuff, and I think that kind of, I don't think either one of us like crazy remember every little nuance of the He Gets Us ad. Wasn't my favorite one, but it created conversation. It challenged me to go, how do I think about this? If you ever encountered sleeping Jesus kind of thing, it created a tension that really pushes me to think like, man.
Which is what Jesus did.
Yeah. And kind of in that space.
Hey, man, we are at our longest episode ever.
Because this is really 3 parts now.
It's we've gotten through half of our episode outline for what was supposed to be one 60-minute episode.
We kind of got through most of 3, I think. I don't think we've addressed 4.
Yeah, maybe.
And I don't know that we're going to come back. I
don't know that we will, because we're going to be so far removed from this. Go ahead.
Can I say one other thing then before we kind of get going?
I guess so. Nobody's listening anymore anyways.
I think one of the things about this, when we think about culture and we think about the influence of the Super Bowl on the community and things, the Super Bowl is one of the largest events throughout the year for sex trafficking. It is an incredible event that's a ton of fun that we all love watching, but I think sometimes we're just not aware of the things that are happening behind the scenes, because all these super powerful people come into town, all these people who just maybe have extra resources come into town, and they want to have what they think is a good time, and it comes at the expense of individuals. It comes at the expense of their families. It comes at the hurt of, I just think about a dad. As a dad, I don't have daughters. I know you do. I just think about like being a dad. I've got a friend, he had 2 daughters, and they watched Taken, and he looked at them and he said, I want you to know I love you as much or more than he loved his daughter. But if I get hit in the back of the head, I'd die. Because he'd had a pretty massive stroke, and it was like amazing that he's even alive.
Have a certain set of
he's
skills.
Like, and I don't have a skill set, and so I will come, but it's not as hopeful as what that movie is doing, and so
that's why I have that samurai sword sitting right there,
a couple blowguns sitting over there, and I just think that's the thing, is that we have to think about the fact that in the moment, how does the church get involved? I think we've got to step around some things like, A21 campaign with Christine Kane and what they're doing to stop trafficking. I think we need to listen to some other ministries and thoughts and ideas that when they say, hey, here's tensions around the world that happen, and these things that you go make a pot of chili and have a bunch of appetizers and make desserts, and you bring a bunch of friends over and y'all sit around and laugh and have a good time. And there's genuine hurt in the world that's happening over a game, that people are leveraging this game for so much more. And so I think that's the thing I would say is like, what's your superpower? How do you engage your community? But remember, things are bigger than just us. And I know that we can't all go be Liam Neeson, but how do we step in and address the hurt and the struggle that's happening in the world, and remember that things, and look, you can enjoy the game. And if you're an Eagles fan, like, good for you. I saw the other day that Travis Kelce's thinking about retiring. And so all the anti-Taylor Swift people are like, if all I knew is I had to pull for the Eagles for one day. There's Cowboys fans all over the world going, if I would have just pulled for the Eagles, they would have been gone 3 years ago. But I think that whole tension is something that's just there of, and you can enjoy some things, but I think we've also just got to remember there's a lot of hurt. And so I know we're not going to come back to this, and that's something I had just written down, just thinking about the things that I know are in this world that are going there.
Yeah, and that's a great final word. And I do want to say that you may not be Liam Neeson, but you do have a certain set of skills.
Amen.
And it may be a different set of skills than he has. It may be a different set of skills than Johnny Utah had. It may be even a different set of skills that Maximus Decimus Aurelius or Andy Stanley or John Mark Comer. But you do have a certain set of skills, something that you can do better than anyone else around you. And if you're struggling to figure out what that is, we would love to help you with that. You can continue this conversation or engage us with a new one at higherministries.com. We do want to thank them for their sponsorship of the Pulpit and Porch podcast. We want to remind you that you can find the Pulpit and Porch podcast, engage with us at higherministries.com, or find us, the Pulpit and Porch, at Facebook, Instagram, and wherever else you love to connect with people on the social medias. Hey, have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next week. Know that you are special and you do have a certain set of skills.